This video contains spoilers for the second season of Arcane. If anything, you've been warned. Like many people, I was looking forward to the release of the second season of Arcane. Unfortunately, it left me with mixed impressions. The plot seemed disjointed and ill-conceived to me. The story chaotically jumps from one topic to another without delving into any of them. While in the first season each storyline was harmoniously intertwined with the overall story, this one lacks that. However, I'm not saying that the second season was a complete failure. It retained all the same strengths that we loved in the first season. Stunning atmospheric graphics and animation, incredibly effective and dynamic scenes that are impossible to tear yourself away from. But it was not enough for me. I was waiting for a powerful plot, a single and well-developed narrative that could captivate and leave an indelible impression. Instead, I spent most of my time at a loss, asking myself questions over and over again, like what's going on here? While the first season left me completely delighted, I had mixed feelings after the second. You guys can agree with my opinion or, on the contrary, not share it. It is your right to do so. But I will try to substantiate my point of view in detail. And I'll start with the most important thing: the plot's departure from the main narrative, the confrontation between the two cities. After Jinx's missile hit the council building, it seemed that the second season would focus on the civil war between the upper and lower cities. This could well have been the key conflict around which, like in the first season, the entire plot would have been built. But this did not happen. The confrontation between Zaun and Piltover ends in just a few episodes. The Zaunites break into a ceremony to commemorate the dead. They are quickly suppressed and this plotline is suddenly forgotten. It reappears only in the final episode where Piltover and Zaun decide to unite in the face of a common enemy, Victor. And here the question arises, how did it happen? In the first season, we were clearly shown that Piltover and Zaun are two different worlds, two opposing ideologies that cannot get along. Even Vander's efforts to reconcile could not erase this gap. To make the unification of these cities look convincing, we needed a large-scale, elaborate conflict that would take several episodes. However, instead, the creators simply dismissed the confrontation, and in the first 15 minutes of the final episode, the characters unexpectedly make peace. Jace says that the situation is critical and all the differences seem to evaporate. No one asks any questions, not even Savika, who, having become a representative of the lower town, is completely silent in the season finale. This is the end of the quote-unquote confrontation arc. If the confrontation between the cities has lost its role as a central theme, what was the thing that became the main leitmotif of the second season? There is no clear answer to this question. The first act hints at a revolution. Savika tries to turn Jinx into a symbol of revolution, but she shows absolutely no interest. Her thoughts are occupied with other things, her sister or her unexpected concern for a girl named Isha, whom she rescues. The concept of Isha as a character capable of reminding Jinx of her past and awakening lost human emotions in her could have been promising. However, the realization of this idea leaves much to be desired. Isha appears on the screen only from time to time, and her function in the plot is to move the story in the right direction. She has no pronounced character or significant actions. She remains in the shadows, creating only the illusion of her importance. Jinx rescues her at the beginning of the season, but then Isha practically disappears from the narrative, only to play a key role in the finale of the third episode by stopping Vi. In the second act, the writers try to develop Isha, to make her a significant figure in Jinx's life. But there is not enough time for this. We are shown that they have become close, that Isha has always been a part of her family. However, until the moment she tragically sacrifices herself in the sixth episode, her connection to the other characters remains insufficiently revealed. The idea of a character like Isha is a good one, but her development suffers from the lack of the screen time. However, this is a problem not only with Isha but also with many storylines in the second season. I'll talk about them a little bit later. Continuing on with the theme of the revolution of Zaun's inhabitants, which began to unfold in the first act, it is worth noting that in the second act it practically comes to naught. The revolution fades into the background and the characters seem to forget about its existence. Jinx now goes with Vi to rescue Vander. The main focus of the plot of the second act shifts to this mission, as well as to the actions of Victor in his cult of the enlightened, let's call it that. However, a clear unifying theme that would connect all the storylines does not appear in the second act. Instead, the viewer tries to understand where everything is going and what this series wants to convey. As a result, the third act boils down to Jace having to stop Victor by uniting the forces of the upper and lower city. The Ambessa line is the best candidate for the role of a connecting element. She is present in all the episodes, although her actions and goals seem extremely contradictory. At the beginning of the season, her behavior is still logical and connected to the continuation of the conflict between the cities, but then the plot takes its first strange turn. Ambessa becomes a key figure, and her motives begin to change dramatically in almost every episode. Let me remind you guys that at first her goal was to get the Hex Tech to protect her family from the Black Rose and participate in Noxus conflicts. However, the Black Rose itself, which was supposed to be an important threat, turns into a meaningless element that has almost no impact on the course of the season. Let us get back to Ambessa. After she organizes a provocation at a memorial ceremony, her logical interest in the Hex Tech suddenly gives way to an obsession with Warwick as a living weapon. But as soon as she encounters Victor, her plans change again. Now she's interested in Victor's abilities for creating elite fighters. It would seem that this is still connected to her conflict with the Black Rose. But no, Ambessa forgets about the feud, ignores the fact that the Black Rose first killed her son and then kidnapped Mel. And as a result, Ambessa suddenly decides to conquer Piltover entirely, for some reason. To summarize Ambessa's behavior, her actions clearly indicate a desire to gain more power. However, to achieve this, she simply moves from one point to another, trying to manipulate everyone around her, ignoring that her own original motivation was to protect Noxus and her family. It is unclear why she is doing all this. Is she hoping that by working with Victor, he will not only subjugate her to the skull but also help her? To be honest, it seems like she's not particularly good at strategic thinking, and all her hesitations with the motto, "I want more," accompany her throughout this season. As a result, Ambessa becomes the central figure of the second season, which, in terms of the logic of the first season, does not look like a continuation of the plot but rather a confusing teaser or a big cliffhanger for the future series about Noxus. It is unclear what the main point of the events is. What is the original idea of all this? What do the creators want to tell us through these events? The first season was a great story about the clash of two opposing ideologies embodied in the nations of the upper and lower city. Against this backdrop, a more personal story of Jinx unfolded. Her formation as a character, her relationship with Va, her fall, her transformation from a naive girl who wanted to help everyone to a destroyer of everything she held dear. Everyone turned their backs on her, and only Silco remained, who, although he behaved abusively in some moments, still loved her, as she hit the rock bottom and stayed there for a while. It was a smart and understandable tragedy where no character was purely a villain. They all had their reasons, and we saw their motivations, understood how they got to the point they were in and where it would all ultimately lead. To put it simply, what we saw in the first season, an intimate, more down-to-earth story, has now turned into a story about a global conflict on a world scale. The characters are shifting the focus away from their personal dramas and starting to face metaphysical questions. It seems to me that the creators, not knowing how to develop the second season, decided to raise the stakes dramatically, weaving in elements of the multiverse and the final battle with God, which Victor now is. In my opinion, the second season lacks additional episodes that could have revealed Isha as a character in more depth. She becomes important to Jinx in the first 6 episodes, but essentially appears very rarely, only to remind us of her presence. It would have been helpful if the Mel arc and her relationship with the Black Rose, which this season feels like filler with little impact, was also explored in more detail. The bottom line is that the second season of Arcane was originally conceived as a continuation of the first, with an emphasis on the confrontation between the cities and ultimately the separation of Piltover and Zaun, as stated in the game lore. And it's a shame that the main idea of the first season was left without a proper conclusion, and the second season turned into a confusing alternation of events, as if glued between the story of Piltover and Zaun and some future series about Noxus. There was the ridiculous Black Rose, which is incomprehensible to ordinary viewers who haven't read the lore of the game, and Ambessa went completely off course, changing her goals and desires from episode to episode. In addition, this season she has even more screen time than Jinx and Vi. But at the very least, the relationship arc between Vi and Jinx is definitely one of the best in the second season. Here, they try to rebuild their family ties in an effort to save Vander, who becomes the central figure around which their understanding is rebuilt. However, despite the fact that their storyline is brought to an end, many questions remain about other characters. For example, it would have been interesting to explore the character of Sinjid, who appears on screen for only a few seconds at the end of some episodes, except of course for the scenes related to Warren. Also worth noting are the secondary characters who were introduced exclusively for the second season. Take Loris for example. He appears in a scene where he drinks with Vi in an alley. Then he occasionally watches her fight in an underground club with a sad expression, as if they were old friends. We don't even learn his name, it seems, until the 8th episode. And in the end, he just dies. I think many of you didn't even remember how it happened. But yes, everyone remembers Maddie. She was made almost a key character. She appears in only 4-5 moments in the entire season, but everyone hates her. And all simply because she slept with Caitlyn. And because of this, a whole cult of hatred was created around Maddie, even before she cheated on Caitlyn in the last episode. As for Mel, she is a completely unnecessary character for the second season, who actually plays no role in the plot, but she has her own arc, which of course is confusing and not properly revealed. What's funny is that after Mel found out that she has magic, her only function in the story is to put up a shield in the last episode. And one more thing, when the Black Rose kidnapped Mel, we were never told why she should help this organization or what their goals were. Instead, we get a few minutes of incomprehensible conversation in which Mel and a shadow in the form of a woman communicate in riddles. Again, this season is too short, and it clearly lacks the time to go deeper into all the arcs it tries to present as key. Echo and Heimerdinger effectively remain in the shadows throughout the story with the exception of episode 7, when they enter a parallel reality. While they puzzle over how to get back, Jace continues to go about his business. And he finds out that it turns out that the sorcerer who saved him as a child was Victor. Victor from the parallel universe advises Jace to try to get his Victor back on track because he has lost his mind and doesn't realize that turning people into mutants is a disastrous idea. To be honest, I don't understand why it was necessary to introduce the element of a multiverse into this story. Let us say that Jace realized that Victor had lost his way and was doing something stupid while still in his universe. It would have been possible to come to the conclusion that Victor needed to be stopped, even without those tragic scenes in the parallel universe. And Echo and Heimerdinger would most likely have found a solution themselves and developed some new inventions, or somehow try to invent the same Z-drive. And apparently Heimerdinger has ceased to be an interesting character for the developers and the creators, so he just dies. As for the relationship between Echo and Powder in the parallel universe, it certainly looks romantic, especially in the scenes with dancing and kissing. However, there's still one caveat. In fact, their love storyline in episode 7 is only fan service. It has no practical function in the plot. In their world, they were friends as children. Then there was the moment when Echo tried to stop Jinx on the bridge, and that is where their interactions end. Even if Echo fell in love with Powder from the parallel universe because she's not crazy, when he returns to his world, he continues to do his usual things as if nothing has changed. Save people like he did in the first season, that is. He also stops Jinx from committing suicide by persuading her to help her sister. But again, this is not the result of his journey to the parallel world, but simply a continuation of what he has always done. The only thing that remains of this journey is his sad expression in the last scene of the season when he sits on the balcony, and that's it. So in my opinion, the story with the parallel world does not carry much meaning or important plot twists, except for the creation of the Z-Drive. Also, the relationship between Victor and Jace has nothing to do with the main arcs that take place in the season, until the last episode, when Jace says that everyone needs to unite to stop Victor. Everyone suddenly forgets about their differences, the upper and lower cities unite as a team and go to war. There are no quarrels, no fights, as if they never existed, and no old wounds. They just become friends? If there was an additional episode in which they would have worked things out, showing how they came to this reconciliation, it would have made much more sense than having a friendly alliance from scratch at the end, which is absurd given their previous enmity. Another scene I want to talk about that seems like pure fan service is the intimate moment between Vi and Caitlyn in the prison cell. Yes, I do understand that fans were waiting for it. I'm not saying that fan service scenes are bad. If they organically fit into the plot, develop events, then everything is fine. But here you get the feeling that everything else that happens at the moment of this scene is completely irrelevant. While Jinx has just told her sister that she doesn't want to live and is going to commit suicide, and there is a war going on outside that needs to be prepared for, these characters seem to be impatient for something completely different. I have nothing against the way these characters develop their romantic relationship, but the context is important to me. It should not be just an event that happens, but a moment to which there is a logical development, and there has to be more behind these characters than just their meeting or the fact that Caitlyn, for example, is changing her mind about Vi for the 4th time, just because the latter called her a cupcake or whatever that was. And at the same time, Caitlyn seems to forget about what happened in the first act and how badly they fought at the end of the 3rd episode. So to summarize, some characters remain completely undisclosed. The narrative of the season has no clear centralized line, which makes it feel like a set of disparate fragments. Each character is busy doing their own thing, as if they have forgotten about each other. Only at the end of the season do their storylines somehow intertwine, but it happens so suddenly and chaotically that it feels like a few more episodes are needed to really develop all the topics raised. The 2nd season, unfortunately, is much inferior to the first. The gap between them is obvious. The first season set an incredibly high bar, and despite all the efforts, the 2nd season failed to meet it. The plotline was not fully developed, and as a result, it turned out to be rather dull and mediocre. I'm pretty confident that I might be criticized for this video, but I just expressed my opinion and emotions because I care about this series. When I watched the first season, I really fell in love with it and was looking forward to the sequel, the 2nd season that is. And even after the 2nd season, I still like the show, but the 2nd season left me with such mixed feelings that it's hard to put into words. I'm very sorry that my expectations were not met. Nevertheless, thank you guys for being with me and listening to my cry of the soul, so to say. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Do share your opinions in the comments about what you guys think of Arcane Season 2. And now I'm gonna say goodbye to you guys. See you soon in my tavern for a mug of the most delicious ale in all of Runeterra.